Christmas is tight this year, Betty. It's probably best if you just stay home. My daughter-in-law, Mildred, said it while she was stirring a pot. She didn't even turn around from her stove. Just said it over her shoulder, casual as you please, like she was commenting on the weather. You can stay home. Just 4 words. 4 words, and they landed like a punch to the gut. Stay home meant you are not wanted. Stay home meant you are a burden. Stay home meant it is easier for us if you just disappear. I suppose Mildred thought that was the end of it. She figured I'd just take my little dismissal, nod politely, and go back to my quiet house and be a good, forgotten old woman. She didn't know me very well. She really didn't know what was coming. She definitely didn't expect the photograph. The one I posted on Christmas night. Oh, that little, simple photograph. That was the photo that had my son, Cody, and his wife driving clear across state lines in a snowstorm, blowing up my phone, trying to find me. That was the photo that made my phone ring and ring and ring. My friends from the church choir, my old neighbors from Brentwood, even some of my late husband Raymond's old coworkers, all of them calling, asking, Betty, are you okay? Betty, what is going on? But all that came later. In that moment, standing in her kitchen, all I felt was cold, colder than the December air outside. I was standing there in her $1 million kitchen in Franklin, holding my green bean casserole. It was the good one, the one I make from scratch, the one with the crispy onions on top that Cody always said was his favorite in the world. The dish was still warm from my oven. My hands just froze. I was holding this casserole, this offering, this piece of our old family tradition, and she had just told me it wasn't welcome, that I wasn't welcome. I'd driven over because I thought we were going to talk about the menu for Christmas Day. For 35 years, I'd cooked Christmas dinner. When my husband Raymond was alive, our house was the center of everything. The noise, the food, the grandkids running. It was everything. After he passed, I moved to a smaller place. It was just too much house for one person. Cody and Mildred, they took over the hosting. And at first, I was grateful. Oh, Mom, don't you worry about a thing, Mildred had said with that big, bright smile of hers. But over the last few years, don't worry had slowly turned into don't bother. And where was my son? Where was Cody? He was right there. He was standing not 10 feet away, leaning against the marble island, scrolling on his phone. He heard her. I know he did. The kitchen was dead silent, except for the clink, clink, clink of Mildred's spoon against that expensive pot. He didn't look up. He didn't say, Mildred, don't be ridiculous. Of course Mom is coming. He didn't say, we'll talk about this later. He didn't say anything. He just looked down at his shoes. His very expensive, shiny brown shoes. He just stood there in silence and let his wife break his mother's heart. That's what did it. That's what hurt more than Mildred's words. Her words were a knife, but his silence was the twisting of it. This was my son, my boy, the one I'd raised to be a good man, a kind man, the one who'd held my hand at his father's funeral and said, I'll take care of you, Mom. And now he just stood there and let me be dismissed, pushed aside, like I was a piece of old furniture that no longer fit her aesthetic. Mildred finally turned around. She'd stopped stirring. She had that bright, empty smile she used when she was getting her way, a smile that never quite reached her eyes. I'm glad we got that settled, she said, wiping her hands on a linen towel. It just gets so hectic, you know, and we have Cody's boss coming this year. It's just a lot. I looked at her. I looked at my son, who was still studying his shoes like they held the secrets of the universe. And I looked down at the casserole in my hands. I didn't cry. I promised myself I wouldn't. Not in her house. I turned and I walked to her front door. I opened it, and I very gently placed the casserole dish on her welcome mat. I didn't want to take it back with me. I didn't want anything that had been in that room. My voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. I suppose you can leave that for the raccoons, I said. I walked back to my car. I got in, and I just sat there for a long time, in the driver's seat. I just sat. The humiliation was so heavy, it felt like I couldn't breathe. They thought I would just go home and cry. They thought I would just obey. They thought they had told me my place, and that my place was to be alone in my little house, invisible and silent. They told me to stay home. They told me I wasn't wanted at their Christmas, but I didn't stay home. Not for 1 second. I drove home from their house in Franklin, but I didn't really see the road. My mind was somewhere else entirely. When you get to be 72, you spend a lot of time with your memories. Their company, you see, and as I sat there in the cold of my car, I couldn't help but think of the warmth. I was thinking about the house my late husband, Raymond, and I built in Brentwood all those years ago. It wasn't a mansion like the one Mildred insisted on, but it was our house. Raymond and we drew up the plans on a napkin at a little diner. He put in the hardwood floors himself. I hung the wallpaper in the kitchen. And Christmas! Oh, Christmas in that house was magic. I have this old cedar chest. Smells like a forest inside. Every year, on the day after Thanksgiving, Raymond would haul it into the living room, and we'd open it. Out would come all the memories. The chipped angel for the top of the tree, the ornaments the kids made in school out of glue and macaroni, and the stockings. I'd sewn 3 of them myself years ago when I had more patience. Thick red felt with a white cuff. I stitched their names on them. 1 for Cody and 1 for my daughter, Sarah. The 3rd was for a baby that one stays in the chest. I'd hang them over the fireplace Raymond built, stone by stone. My daughter, Sarah, she's a wonderful daughter. She's smart, works for a big tech company out in Seattle. She has her own family now, her own life. We FaceTime every Sunday, and she's always telling me to come visit. But, Seattle is a long way from Nashville, and her husband's family is out there, too, so they always spend Christmas Day with them. It's just the way things are. I get it. I really do. But that's what made Cody so important. He was here. He was the one who stayed. He was the one who was supposed to carry on the Nashville traditions, the one who was supposed to remember the smell of pine in our living room and the taste of his father's Christmas ham. When he first brought Mildred home, I was so happy for him. She was polite, very polished. She worked in interior design, she said. She wore a lot of beige and gray. The first few dinners were fine. And then the taste-driven criticism started. It wasn't all at once. It was slow. A little comment here. A little suggestion there. Oh, Betty, she'd say, this old flowered wallpaper in the guest bath. It's a lot, isn't it? Have you ever thought about just a clean eggshell white? I'd just laugh. Heavens, no, Mildred. Raymond and I put that up together. It's staying. But after Raymond passed, and I moved into my smaller place, and they took over hosting, the suggestions became decisions. And they were all about removing my history, my taste, my past. It started with the wreath. My church group and we make these beautiful wreaths every year. We go out, we clip the holly, we sit and talk and laugh and tie the bows. It's one of my favorite days. I brought mine over to their house. So proud of it with its big red bough. Mildred took it from me with 2 fingers like it was a dirty dish rag. Oh, Betty, she said, and I've come to hate those 2 words. Thank you, but it doesn't really match the aesthetic. We're doing a very clean, minimalist silver and white this year. She put it in her coat closet. I'm sure it went straight into the trash the minute I left. Then, it was my grandmother's rocking chair. It was the chair I rocked both Cody and Sarah in. It sat in a little corner of their living room. One day I came over and it was gone. Where's the rocker? I asked. Oh, we moved it to the garage for space, Mildred said, waving her hand. It didn't fit the flow. To the garage. I went out to look, and there it was sitting on the cold concrete, next to a bag of lawn fertilizer. I didn't say a word. I just went to my car, put the seat down, and wrestled that chair into my trunk myself. It sits in my living room now. The worst, though, was the photographs. Raymond and we had a whole wall in our old house. Pictures of the kids. Cody in his Little League uniform, teeth missing. Sarah on her graduation day. A picture of me and Raymond on our wedding day. Just our family. When Mildred and Cody moved into their big house, I gave them a box of the best ones. I thought they'd want them. They never put them up. Their walls were just clean. That's the word she always used. Clean. Big, empty gray walls with one giant abstract painting of a blue circle that probably cost more than my car. I finally asked Cody about it. I gave you those pictures. Did you not want them? He shifted, the way he always does when he's uncomfortable. Oh, yeah, Mom. Mildred she's got a plan for the walls. She's just organizing. That was his word. Organizing. I went back for Thanksgiving, and I saw the box of photos. It was in the pantry, on the floor, being used as a doorstop. I stood there, looking at my own wedding picture, holding their pantry door open. I should have known then. I should have seen it all for what it was. By that Thanksgiving, I realized she wasn't organizing. She was removing me one piece at a time. That feeling of being erased, it's a funny thing. It's like being a ghost in your own life. You're there, but people just look right through you. After I saw those photographs in the pantry, I just pulled back. I didn't call as much. I waited for them to call me. And for a while, it was quiet. The first few weeks of December were just silent. I used to be in a group chat on my phone with Mildred and a few of her friends. They called it the Christmas Committee. It was all about planning the parties, the menus, who was bringing what. Last year, I was on it. This year, nothing. My phone was dark. I figured I should stop by. I'd knitted a little blanket for a friend of Mildred's who just had a baby, and I told myself I'd just drop it off. That was my excuse. It was December 18th. I remember because the air had that sharp, cold bite to it. The kind of cold that feels like snow is coming. I pulled up to their house. It was all lit up. Mildred had hired professionals, of course. Not a single bulb out of place. Just perfect and cold. I walked up the stone path, holding the little gift bag, and I was about to ring the bell, but I heard them. The walls are thick, but they were in the front room, and Mildred was on speakerphone. Her voice just cuts right through. I just don't know what else to tell her, Mildred was saying, and I could hear the irritation in her voice. She slows everything down. I've got a schedule, and honestly, she just brings old lady energy to the photos. I froze. My hand was in the air, about to press the bell. I just stopped. Old lady energy. The words just hung there in the cold air. That's what I was. Not a mother. Not a grandmother-in-law. Not the woman who raised her husband. I was just old lady energy. I heard Cody's voice then, weak and muffled. Mildred, come on, that's... What, Cody? She snapped back, not missing a beat. It's true. I'm trying to build a brand for our family. Your boss is going to be there. I want it to be young and fresh, not cluttered. Cluttered. That was me, too. I stood there on the mat, and I felt so stupid, so small. I should have just turned around. I should have just left. But I'm not a coward. I took a deep breath, and I pressed the bell. There was a sudden, dead silence from inside. Then I heard footsteps, and the big, heavy door swung open. Mildred stood there. Her face was all smiles, but her eyes were tight. Cody was behind her in the hallway, and he wouldn't look at me. He was already looking for his shoes to stare at. "Betty," she said, her voice like honey. "What a surprise. We were just talking about the caterer." "I'm sure you were," I said. I held up the little bag. "I just wanted to drop this off. For your friend." "Oh, how sweet." She took the bag from me. "Well, I'm so glad you're here. Actually, I've been meaning to give this to you." She turned and walked over to a closet. Cody was still frozen in the hallway, looking like a little boy who'd been caught. Mildred came back, and she was holding a plastic grocery bag, the kind you get from Kroger, all crinkled up. She held it out to me. "What is this?" I asked. "Well," she said, still smiling that terrible bright smile, "we're going with a whole new theme this year. All silver and white. You know, clean. And these they don't match." I didn't have to open it. I knew what it was. I took the bag from her. Inside, wadded up at the bottom, were the 2 stockings I'd made by hand 35 years ago. The one with Cody stitched on it, and the one with Sarah. I'd given them to Cody when he got married. I thought he'd want them for his own fireplace, a piece of his childhood. Now, they were in a plastic bag. "We're using new ones this year for the photos," she explained, as if I was a child. "It just fits." I looked down at that bag. Then I looked up past her, and I stared right at my son. "Cody," I said. My voice was quiet. He finally looked at me. His face was pale. "Do you have anything to say?" I asked. He opened his mouth. He looked at Mildred, then he looked at me, and he just shook his head. He looked back down at his shoes. That was it. That was the answer. I held that cold plastic bag, my own stitching staring back at me. I didn't say anything else. I just turned around and walked back to my car. I got in, and I sat there holding that bag. And for the first time, I wanted to cry. I had this sudden, desperate urge to call Sarah, to call my daughter and just unload, to tell her what her brother was letting happen, to tell her I felt so alone. But what would I say? Your brother and his wife are throwing me out. I couldn't bear to ruin her holiday, to put that burden on her from 2,000 miles away. It wasn't her problem to fix. So I just sat there in my car, in front of their perfect, cold house, holding a plastic bag full of my own memories. I had never, ever felt so alone in my own city. I started the car. I put the bag on the passenger seat. I wasn't crying anymore. I just felt cold, clear. So on December 18th, I made a decision. A quiet one, a cold one. I didn't drive home. Not right away. I just drove. I drove through the streets of Brentwood and Franklin, past all the big, perfect houses with their perfect, cold Christmas lights. I drove until I found a little coffee shop that was still open. I sat in the corner, holding that plastic grocery bag. I was 72 years old. I was a widow, and I had just been told in no uncertain terms that I was not wanted at my own son's Christmas, that I was old lady energy, that my memories were clutter. I knew I couldn't stay in Nashville for Christmas. I couldn't sit in my little house, just 2 towns over, knowing they were having their perfect party, knowing they were opening presents and laughing, and that my absence was a relief to them. The thought of it was more than I could bear. I pulled out my phone, right there in the coffee shop. I didn't know what I was looking for. A hotel? A flight to Seattle to see Sarah? No, I couldn't do that to her. I couldn't show up on her doorstep, sad and uninvited, and ruin her holiday. I wasn't going to be a burden on any of my children. I just wanted peace. I typed quiet mountain cabin retreat into the little search bar. The first thing that popped up was Asheville, North Carolina. It was only about 4 hours away. I saw a picture of a little log cabin with a real stone fireplace and a porch that looked out over the mountains. The website said, last-minute cancellation, available December 20th to 27th. I booked it, right there, sitting in that coffee shop. I paid for it on my credit card. I was going to be alone for Christmas, but I was going to be alone on my own terms. When I got home, I felt different. The humiliation was still there, but it was hardening. It was turning into something else, something like resolve. I packed a small suitcase, and then I walked over to my cedar chest. Raymond's mother had given it to us when we got married. I opened it, and that good, sharp smell of cedar hit me, a smell like a real forest. I didn't pack the macaroni ornaments. I packed the things that mattered. I packed my grandmother's lace tablecloth, the one I only used for Christmas dinner. I packed Raymond's old woodworking tools, not the big ones, just his favorite hand plane and a small chisel, the ones that still had the dark, smooth shape of his grip on them. And then I saw the plastic bag from Mildred. I took the stockings out. I folded them neatly, Cody's and Sarah's, and I put them in the chest right on top. They were not clutter. They were my life. I closed the lid. I would take the whole chest with me. The drive to Asheville on the 20th was quiet. The mountains were gray and brown, sleeping for the winter, but the air felt cleaner. I followed the directions up a winding road and pulled up to a little cabin. A woman was on the porch, sweeping. She looked to be in her 60s, with bright, curly gray hair and a big, red wool sweater. "You must be Betty," she called out with a smile that was, well, it was real. It wasn't like Mildred's. This one reached her eyes. "I'm June," she said, walking over. "I own this place. Let me help you with your bags." She was warm and energetic. She told me she divorced her husband 5 years ago and bought this land with her half of the money. "Best decision I ever made," she said, handing me the key. "Firewood stacked on the porch. Help yourself. And if you need anything, I'm just down the hill." I spent the next 2 days just breathing. I sat by the fireplace. I read a book. I didn't talk to anyone. I just was. But on December 23rd, I was getting restless. June had mentioned a little community center in town that was getting ready for a big Christmas Eve supper. She said they always needed volunteers. I figured, well, it was better than sitting alone. I drove into town and found the place. It was a little church hall, and it was buzzing. It smelled like cinnamon and pine and roasting turkey. A man was in the corner trying to fix a broken leg on a little wooden chair. He was tall, with a bit of a stoop, and his hands were covered in sawdust. He was getting frustrated. "That's never going to hold," I said before I could stop myself. He looked up, surprised. "Well, ma'am, I'm doing my best." "My husband, Raymond, he built furniture," I said, walking over. "You're trying to force it. You need to brace it differently." He looked at me, then at the chair. "You know anything about this?" "I know what I see," I said. I told him I'd brought my husband's old hand plane. His eyes lit up. His name was Tom, a retired carpenter. He was volunteering to fix all the donated toys and furniture before the supper. We ended up in the back workshop. I showed him the tools. He held the hand plane, tested the weight of it. "This is a good one," he said, nodding. We didn't talk about much, just wood and glue and the right way to fix a wobbly leg. It wasn't romance. Lord, no. It was comfort. It was two people who knew how to make things, just making things. We fixed 6 chairs and a wooden rocking horse. It felt good. It felt useful. Christmas Eve came. I almost didn't go to the supper. I thought maybe I'd just stay in my cabin. But June knocked on my door. "You're coming?" she said. "It's not a question." So I went. The hall was packed. It wasn't a soup kitchen. It was just a supper for anyone. People who were alone, families who were traveling, young folks who couldn't fly home. It was just people. June grabbed me. "Betty, you're on gravy," she said, and threw an apron at me. For the next hour, I didn't think about Mildred. I didn't think about Cody. I was just Betty, the lady who knew how to keep gravy from lumping. Tom was there, serving ham. He gave me an extra big slice. People were talking and laughing. Someone was playing carols on an old piano, and they were a little off-key. It was perfect. It was real. It was the opposite of clean and minimalist. It was warm and loud and messy and wonderful. I was standing by the dessert table, talking to June, holding a plate of food. I just said something, I don't even remember what, and I was laughing. A real deep laugh, the kind I hadn't had in I don't know how long. This young woman, she was taking pictures for the center's newsletter. She just snapped one. "You look so happy," she said. Later that night, back in my cabin, she emailed it to me. I looked at it. It was me. My eyes were crinkled up. My hair was a mess from the steam in the kitchen. And I was surrounded by people I'd only just met. And I was happy. I opened up my phone. And I posted that picture. I just wrote a simple little caption. Christmas isn't about where you're placed, but where you're welcomed. Feeling very blessed in Asheville. I put my phone on the nightstand. I turned off the ringer. And I went to sleep in front of the fire. I just knew that back in Nashville, the storm was just about to begin. I woke up on Christmas morning. For the first time in, well, maybe ever, I woke up to silence. Not the sound of grandkids tearing open presents. Not the sound of my late husband Raymond putting the turkey in the oven. Just the sound of the wind in the pine trees outside my cabin. I made a pot of coffee. I sat by the fireplace, the one I had built myself the night before. And I promised myself I wouldn't look at my phone. I was going to have one day of peace. But curiosity, it's a powerful thing, isn't it? Around 10 o'clock in the morning, I finally picked it up. I'd put it on silent, but the screen was lit up like a Christmas tree itself. I had 34 notifications. Now, for a woman my age, that's a lot. That's more than I get in a month. I opened my Facebook page, and the picture, the one from the community supper, it was everywhere. It was like watching a little fire spread. My friend Mary from the First Baptist Church Choir, she had shared it. She'd written, "Betty, this is just wonderful. So glad to see you, so happy and being celebrated. Merry Christmas." And under her share, the comments started. They weren't mean. They were confused. My old neighbor from Brentwood, Carol, she'd written, "Wait, I thought she was spending Christmas with Cody." And Mildred, she told me they were having his boss over. Then another from one of Raymond's old work buddies. "Why isn't she with her family this year? Is everything okay?" And then the one that just hung in the air. "Where's Cody? Did he let his mother spend Christmas alone?" I just sat there in the quiet of the cabin reading these messages. It was the strangest feeling. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel anything really. I was just watching. They were just asking questions. Questions I suppose I had been asking myself for the past 2 years. I kept scrolling, and then I saw it, the one that made my stomach clench, just for a second. My daughter, Sarah, had shared it. My daughter, all the way out in Seattle, who was probably at that very moment watching her own children tear open presents. She'd shared my picture to her own page, and she'd written, "My beautiful mom. So glad you're having a wonderful Christmas. Asheville is gorgeous. We have to go together. Love you." And she'd put 3 little red heart emojis next to it. She had no idea. She didn't know the story behind it. She just saw her mother smiling on a lovely vacation. She thought it was nice. And I knew in that instant, I just knew that Mildred would see that. And Mildred would know that Sarah didn't know. And that was the one thing Mildred couldn't control. You see, Mildred could handle a few nosy neighbors from Brentwood. She could just call them old busybodies and laugh it off. But she couldn't handle Sarah. Sarah was the successful one. The one who worked in tech. The one who lived in a big city. The one who Mildred was a little bit intimidated by. And now Sarah had innocently, publicly shown the whole world that she thought her mom was just fine. And Mildred would know that this one little picture shared by my daughter was about to expose the truth. I could just see it. I could see Mildred in her perfect gray and white living room, holding a mimosa, waiting for her boss to arrive. She'd be checking her phone. She is always checking her phone. She'd see the comments from the neighbors and get annoyed. But then she'd see Sarah's share. And that would be when the panic set in. Her panic wouldn't be for me. It wouldn't be, oh no, my mother-in-law is all alone. No, it would be, oh no, what is Sarah going to think? What is she going to say when she finds out? What are people going to say to me? My boss is on his way. My brand, it's all falling apart. It was like watching a train wreck in very, very slow motion. A train wreck I hadn't caused. I just posted one happy picture. The rest was just the truth bubbling up to the surface. I put my phone down and I had my peaceful Christmas. I went for a walk in the woods. The air was so cold and clean. I saw Tom, the carpenter, at the little town market, and he waved. We wished each other a Merry Christmas. It was simple. I went back to my cabin. I made a sandwich. I read my book by the fire. The day passed. The sun went down. The snow started to fall, just light, quiet little flakes. It was late. I was in my pajamas, ready for bed. I'd washed my face, and I was just about to turn out the light. Christmas was over. It was 11:47 p.m. My phone, which I'd left on the nightstand, suddenly lit up and started to scream. The ringer was on, and it was so loud in that quiet cabin, it made my heart jump into my throat. I looked at the screen. It was Cody. I just stared at it for a ring. Then I picked it up. Hello. M.O.M. M.O.M. Where are you? He wasn't yelling. He was screaming. He sounded terrified, out of breath. I've been calling you all day. Your phone's been off. Where are you? I was having Christmas, Cody, I said. My voice was just calm. It felt strange, hearing how calm I was. We're in the car. We're driving, he yelled. Driving? Cody, what on earth are you talking about? It's almost midnight. Mom, where are you? People are calling us. Your friends, Mildred's friends, everyone. They think we abandoned you. Sarah shared your picture. What did you tell her? What did you say? He didn't ask, Mom, are you okay? He asked, Mom, what did you do to us? And then I heard her, Mildred, in the background. Her voice wasn't calm and smooth like it usually was. It was high and sharp and panicked. Ask her for the address. Cody, just get the address. Tell her we're on our way. We have to get to her. We have to show people we are with her. We have to. He must have pulled the phone away. Mom, we're on I-40. It's snowing. We're coming to Asheville. Where are you? People are there. I just listened. I listened to my son stammer. I listened to my daughter-in-law in the background, panicking about her party, about her boss, about her brand. They weren't driving to apologize. They were driving for damage control. They were driving to get me, to find me, to put me in their car, to take another picture, one with all of us smiling to prove to all of Nashville and to my daughter in Seattle that they were the good, loving family they pretended to be. It was so clear. So terribly, horribly clear. For the first time in years, they needed me. They were driving through a snowstorm at midnight, desperate to find me. Not out of love, out of fear. I just stood there in the quiet of my cabin, listening to the panic in my son's voice and the high-pitched, frantic yelling of my daughter-in-law in the background. "Cody," I said, and my voice was so calm, it even surprised me. It was like I was suddenly outside of my own body, watching this whole sad play. "Cody, stop. Stop your car." "What?" "Mom, we're on the highway. It's snowing. We're coming to you." "No," I said. "You're not. You are not going to drive through a snowstorm at midnight, all to save face. I am perfectly safe. I am in a warm cabin. I have had a lovely, peaceful Christmas, just like your wife suggested." "But, Mom, you don't understand," he pleaded. They think Mildred is." "I understand exactly," I said, and I did. I finally did. "This is not about me, Cody. This is about what Mildred's friends think. This is about your boss. This is about you being afraid. I am 72 years old. I am not a child for you to come and rescue in the middle of the night. You are being reckless. Turn your car around, go home, and we will talk when I am back in Nashville." There was a silence on the line. I just heard the thwack, thwack, thwack of their windshield wipers. "Did you hear me, Cody?" "Yes, Mom," he said. His voice was small. He sounded like he was 12 again. "Go home. I am not going to be a part of your damage control. Good night." And I hung up. I hung up on my son. I'd never done that before in my life. I sat down on the edge of the bed. My heart was pounding, but I felt strong. I felt 800 feet tall. I knew they wouldn't stop. They'd turn around, yes, because they were probably scared of me for the first time ever. But they'd be waiting for me in Nashville. They'd be waiting with their excuses and their misunderstandings. The next day, December 26th, I was supposed to be packing. But my mind was just racing. I made some coffee, and I saw June, the cabin owner, outside, feeding her birds. I put on my coat and walked over. She looked at my face. "Well, you look like you just swallowed a hornet's nest," she said, smiling. "Coffee's fresh." We sat on her porch, wrapped in blankets, and I told her all of it. The stockings in the grocery bag, the old lady energy, the phone call at midnight. June just listened, nodding. She wasn't one of those women who interrupts. When I was finished, she just sipped her coffee for a moment. "Well, honey," she said, "first off, good for you for hanging up. That's a start. I don't know what I did wrong." I said, "I tried so hard to fit in, to be helpful." "That's just it," she said, pointing her mug at me. "My ex-husband, he was a controller, and I've learned to see the signs. That woman, your daughter-in-law, she's not just particular. She's a controller. And people like that, they don't want you to fit in. They want you to disappear. They want to be the only one in charge. And you were just a loose end she couldn't control. So she tried to snip you off. And Cody," I said, my voice trailing off. "He's an enabler," she said, just as blunt. "He's afraid of her, afraid of losing his perfect life. He's not protecting you. He's protecting himself." It was harsh, but it was true. Hearing a stranger say it just laid it all bare. It wasn't just a personality clash. It was a pattern of control and a pattern of enabling. And I was the one getting crushed between them. Later that afternoon, I went into town to pick up a few things for the drive home. I ran into Tom, the carpenter. He was at the community center sorting through donations. He smiled when he saw me. "Well, hello there, Betty. You survived the holiday. I see. Just barely, I said, and I tried to laugh. He must have heard the wobble in my voice. He put down the box he was holding. You know, he said in his quiet way, my father taught me how to build, but he also taught me about worth. He'd find these old pieces of barnwood, all weathered and gray. Most folks would have burned them. He picked up a piece of rough sawnwood, but my dad, he'd plane it down. And inside, you'd find this beautiful grain. Strong. Solid. He looked at me. Some people, they look at you, and they just see the gray, weathered outside. They just see old. They don't have the eyes to see the good, solid wood underneath. He tapped the wood. It's not your job to convince them. It's not your fault they're blind. It's your job to just know your own grain. Know you're still solid. I drove back to my cabin, and I felt different. When I got inside, I opened my little laptop. I had been avoiding it. I'd seen the Facebook chaos, but I hadn't checked my email. My inbox, it was full, not with angry messages, but with kindness. My old friend, Susan, from college. Betty, I saw your picture. You look wonderful. I didn't know you were in Asheville. I'm only an hour away in Greenville. We must get lunch soon. It has been too long. Another, from a woman in my old church choir. Betty, that picture made me so happy. We've all missed your voice in the alto section. It hasn't been the same. Please come back and sing with us soon. Letter after letter. People I hadn't seen in months, years. All of them missing me. All of them seeing me. I wasn't just old lady energy. I wasn't clutter. I wasn't invisible. Not to them. I was only invisible to two people. Two people I had been twisting myself into knots for. Two people who, as Tom said, were just blind. I looked at my suitcase, sitting open on the bed. I was supposed to leave tomorrow, December 27th. My original plan when I booked this trip was to just, I don't know, crawl home, pretend it all didn't happen, try to make peace with Cody. I closed the laptop. I knew what I had to do. I was still going home on December 27th. I was going to pull into my driveway, unpack my car, and walk into my house. And then I was going to call Cody and Mildred, and I was going to ask them to come over. I wasn't coming home to reconcile. I wasn't coming home as a guest in my own life. I was coming back as myself. The drive back to Nashville on the 27th was different from the drive out. Driving to Asheville, I had felt small and cold and humiliated. I felt like I was running away. But driving back, I just felt solid. That's the word Tom used. Solid. I wasn't running away from anything anymore. I was driving toward something. I was driving toward the rest of my life. I pulled into my own little driveway. It was just a small condo, the one I'd moved to after Raymond passed. But it was mine. I had my garden. I had my books. It was my nest. I got out of the car and I began to unload. I brought in my suitcase. I brought in my books. And then I went and got the cedar chest. It was heavy, but I managed. I put it right in the center of my living room floor. A reminder. I went to the kitchen to make a cup of tea, and that's when I saw it. Something was off. There was a plastic storage bin, a big gray one, sitting next to my little writing desk. It wasn't mine. I'd never seen it before. My heart started to do a funny little beat. I walked over to it. There was a label on the side, printed in black marker. Perfect, neat handwriting. Mildred's handwriting. The label said, Garage Miscellaneous. I just stared at it. I was afraid to open it. They had been here. They had been in my house. While I was gone, my hands were shaking, but not from fear. It was anger. A cold, quiet anger I had not felt in a very, very long time. They had a key, of course, for emergencies. I'd given it to Cody when I first moved in. Just in case, Mom, he'd said. I opened the bin. Inside were Raymond's tools. The small ones, the hand plane, and the chisels I'd kept from our old workshop. They were just tossed in. On top of them were a stack of my old photo albums, the ones that didn't fit on my shelf, and my grandmother's lace tablecloth, the one I packed in my suitcase to Asheville. No, wait, that wasn't right. I'd thought about packing the tablecloth, but I hadn't. It had been in the linen closet. They had been in my linen closet. They had been in my desk. They had been everywhere. They had come into my home without my permission and tidied me, just like Mildred organized my photos into a doorstop. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I saw everything with a clearness that was almost blinding. I picked up my phone. I dialed Cody's number. He picked up on the first ring. Mom. Oh my gosh, Mom, are you back? Are you okay? We were so... Cody, I said. My voice was like ice. It stopped him cold. I need you and Mildred to come over. Right now. Right now? Mom, it's late. Mildred is... Now, I said, and I hung up. It took them 20 minutes. I didn't move. I just stood in my living room next to the bin. When they knocked, they didn't even use their key. They knocked. I opened the door. Mildred pushed past Cody, all smiles and fake concern. Betty, oh my goodness. Thank God you're home safe. We were worried sick. We were just distraught. Cody wouldn't look at me. He just stood in the entryway, looking down at his shoes. His face was pale and blotchy, like he'd been caught. He looked ashamed. He looked like he'd been ashamed for days. Come in, I said. I didn't smile. I walked into the living room. Sit down. They sat on my little sofa. I didn't sit. I just stood there between the cedar chest I had brought home and the plastic bin they had brought in. Mildred looked around, her eyes darting. Well, it's good to have you back. I'm going to list some things for you, I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through all her fake sweetness. She stopped talking. 1, I said, the wreath I made for your door. You told me it didn't match. You put it in a closet. 2, my grandmother's rocking chair. The one I rocked my children in. You put it in your garage, next to the fertilizer. 3, my wedding photograph. Your husband's father. Used as a doorstop in your pantry. Mildred opened her mouth. Betty, I'm not finished, I said. 4, being removed from the Christmas planning chat, like I'm a child. 5, being told to just stay home from Christmas, like I am a burden. 6, being told, and I quote, that I have old lady energy, and that I clutter the photos. Cody's head snapped up. His eyes were wide with a new kind of horror. Mildred's face went white. Yes, I said, looking right at my son. I was on the porch, Cody. I was standing right there. I heard it all. Cody he broke. He put his head in his hands, and his shoulders started to shake. He was crying. Just silent, awful tears. 7, I said, not missing a beat. My handmade stockings. Your stocking, Cody, given back to me in a Kroger grocery bag, like it was trash. 8, that frantic, selfish, panic phone call on Christmas night. Not asking if I was safe, but yelling at me because your reputation was at stake. And now, 9. I tapped the plastic bin with my foot. I come back to my home, my private, safe home, and I find this. I find that both of you, used your emergency key to come in here without my permission and go through my personal belongings. You tidied my late husband's memories into a bin labeled garage. I looked at Cody, who was just a wreck. And then I looked at Mildred, Her face wasn't soft anymore. It was hard, defensive. It was all a misunderstanding, she snapped, her voice high. We were just trying to help. We were worried. We came to check on you, and the place it was a little disorganized. We were just tidying up. You are twisting everything. I looked at her. I looked at this woman who had tried so hard to erase me, and I felt nothing, just a quiet, cold finality. It was no misunderstanding. Mildred, I said, and now I am going to tell you what happens next. And then I told them something they never expected. Mildred was still sputtering about misunderstandings. Cody was just staring at me, his face wet with tears, finally seeing the whole ugly picture. I held up my hand. I am not here to argue, I said, and my voice was just done. I am here to tell you what happens now. Mildred closed her mouth. First, I said, I'm going to be moving full-time to Asheville. Cody looked up, his eyes wide and red. Moving? Like, for good? Mom, no. I've been in Nashville my whole life, I said, mostly to myself. I thought this is where I would be until the end. But that trip, it showed me there's a difference between a place you just exist in and a place where you're welcomed. I felt more at home in that little town hall with strangers than I have in your house for the past 2 years. I looked at them. So, yes, I'm moving. I'm going to find a little place with a porch, maybe do some work at the community center. Tom, the carpenter, he's offered to show me his workshop. Mildred's face was a mess of confusion. She was trying to calculate what this meant. Cody just shook his head like he couldn't believe it. Mom, but what about here? What about? That brings me to my next point, I said. This house. My house. I looked around my little living room. It was a nice condo, but it was just a place. Raymond wasn't here. My children didn't, my son didn't respect what happened here. And I said, taking a deep breath, I'm putting the Nashville house on the market. I'm selling it. The silence in that room was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. Cody, he looked like I had physically hit him. Sell it, he whispered. His voice was hoarse. Mom, you can't. That's everything. That's our home. That's my childhood home. He was talking about the big house in Brentwood, the one Raymond and I had built, the one I had sold to move here. He was confused. Cody, I said gently, that house is gone. I sold it. Remember? This is my condo. And the big house in Brentwood, that was just our house. It wasn't your house. It was a place where I raised you, but it was always mine and your father's. But the memories, he stammered. Mildred's brain finally caught up, and her panic it was visible. It wasn't sadness. It was raw financial panic. Sell it, she finally said, her voice high and tight. But the market is, and the value, Cody, this is, she couldn't say it. She couldn't say our inheritance. She couldn't say the asset we've been counting on. But her face said it all. She'd seen me as a house, a future payday, an asset, one that she'd almost organized and cluttered right out of her own hands. Cody, I said, ignoring her completely. I looked at my son. A house isn't a home when dignity isn't welcome. He fell apart. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, he said, the tears just rolling down his face. Please don't do this. Don't sell it. We can fix this. I can fix this. I'll talk to Mildred. We'll do anything. Please, Mom, don't. He was begging me to reconsider. And I felt a deep, deep sadness for him, for the man he'd become, the man who'd learned to beg instead of stand. Cody, I said, my mind is made up. The decision is final. I looked at Mildred, whose face was now a mask of pure, cold anger. The fake sweetness was gone. The panic was gone. Now it was just hate. It's just stuff, I said. It's just a house. It's just money. But what you two did, that wasn't about money. That was about respect and dignity and my worth. And you both decided I didn't have any. So yes, I'm selling it. And then I told them the final part. I'm using the money to buy my new place in Asheville, a place just for me. And then I looked at Cody, and I'm using the rest of it to help Sarah with her children's college fund. That was the final blow. Cody just deflated like a balloon. Mildred, she actually stood up. Her face was, I'd never seen a color like that. You're giving it to her, she hissed. The daughter who's never here, the one who leaves you all alone. We are the ones who are here. We are the ones who what, Mildred? I asked. My voice was still quiet. The ones who put my stockings in the trash. The ones who call me old lady energy. The ones who come into my house and pack my life into a bin labeled garage. She had nothing to say. I walked to the door. I opened it. It's time for you to go. Mildred, she grabbed her purse, and she stormed out. She didn't look back. Cody, he stood up. He looked broken. Which, in a way, I suppose he was. He walked to the door. He stopped in front of me. Mom, he whispered. Mom, I love you. I love you too, Cody, I said, and I did. That was the horrible, awful, true part. I did. I loved the little boy in the baseball uniform. I loved the man who'd held my hand at his father's funeral. I didn't like the man he had become. I'm really moving, Cody, I said, my voice a little softer. The for sale sign goes up next week. He just nodded, tears running down his face. When I'm settled in Asheville, I said, you alone can come and visit if you're ready to actually talk. Not to fix this, not to change my mind, just to talk. He just nodded again, and he walked out the door, and I closed it behind him. When the door closed, and they were both gone, my little house was so quiet. I stood there in the entryway for a long time. The silence was different. It wasn't the lonely, empty quiet I had been so afraid of. It was a peaceful quiet, a finished quiet. I walked into the kitchen, and I made myself a cup of tea. I sat in my living room, looking at the 2 chests, the plastic bin from Mildred, filled with things she thought were garage miscellaneous, and my own wooden cedar chest, filled with the things I knew were my treasures. I spent so many years of my life, especially after Raymond passed, thinking that love was my job, that it was my job to make the big dinners, to buy all the presents, to keep the peace, to be pleasing, to be quiet and small and easy, so I wouldn't be a burden. But that horrible, wonderful, lonely Christmas, it taught me something. It taught me that love isn't proven by a holiday invitation. It's not about one perfect day or one aesthetic photo. It's proven by everyday respect. It's proven when someone doesn't call you clutter. It's proven when someone doesn't take the stocking you stitched by hand and throw it in a grocery bag. And it's proven when your own son stands up for you instead of just staring at his shoes. The for sale sign went up the very next Monday. And you know what? My little condo sold in 3 days. The market in Nashville is just, well, it's just crazy. I'm packing boxes now. I'm surrounded by them. And I'm not sad. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to spring. I'm going to find a little apartment in Asheville with a porch where I can sit and drink my coffee and look at the mountains. I'm going to have lunch with June. I'm going to spend time in that workshop with Tom. I think I'm going to learn how to build a birdhouse. And I am definitely going to be the gravy lady at their next community supper. I called Sarah, too. I told her the whole messy truth. She cried. And then she got angry. Angry for me. And I told her, honey, I'm not angry anymore. I'm just done. I'm done being invisible. I told her what I was doing with the money, setting up that college fund for her children. She was quiet for a long, long time. And then she just said, Mom, we've got your room ready. We are counting the days until June. I'm going to fly to Seattle. I'm going to spend the whole summer with my daughter and my grandchildren. I'm going to put my time and my energy and my love where it's welcomed. I know my story is a lot. And I know some of you hearing this, you're going to have some very strong opinions. That's why I wanted to tell it, because I'm sure that there is someone out there listening to this who might be standing in a kitchen right now, holding a casserole dish and feeling invisible. I have to ask you, have you ever felt pushed aside by the very people you loved? And be honest, I know my decision was hard. Was I right to sell the house? Or did I go too far? Was I just punishing Cody? Or was it the only way I could get my dignity back? I'm really asking, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? These stories, they're hard to tell, but I think they need to be told. We need to talk about this. If you have a story or just a thought, please share it in the comments below. I'm going to be reading them. I really am. And if my story, if it meant something to you, I would be so grateful if you would like this video and maybe share it with someone who needs to hear that they are not clutter. And please subscribe to the channel so we can keep sharing these stories together. Thank you for listening to me. Truly,